Hey, third grade. Today we're on page 273 in the Your Turn practice book, and we're going to be reading one more passage this week about a real person named John Glenn. Now, this is a biography, which means it's a true story about one person's life. So both pages will be all about John Glenn and his real life. First, go ahead and turn to the next page to preview the photograph and the caption below. It says, John Glenn was the first American to orbit Earth. He served in the U.S. Senate from 1974 to 1998. So take a look at what he's wearing. And his job was that he was an astronaut. Among other things, right? It also says he served in the Senate, but we will read first about how he was an astronaut. Now, this is an older photo of John Glenn, so I pulled one up to show you. So on the left, you have John Glenn when he was younger, while he was going into outer space working as an astronaut. Look at the uniform he's wearing in that picture. And then on the right, that's John Glenn when he was older, and that's the picture that you see in your book as well. Okay, so we'll read about John Glenn today. All right, turn back to the first page. Remember, you're welcome to read out loud with me, or if you want to follow along quietly, that's fine. At the end, we're going to answer a couple questions about John Glenn. All right, let's get started. Many people admire John Glenn as an American hero. He was a pilot, an astronaut, and a U.S. senator. When he was 77 years old, he became the oldest person ever to fly in space. The next section heading is Serving His Country. John Glenn was born in Ohio in 1921. When he was 20 years old, World War II broke out. Glenn signed up for the Army, yet he was not called to serve. When we say serve and we're talking about being in the military, that just means that they worked in the military. So he signed up to join the Army, but they did not call him, so he did not get to serve. This was a problem for Glenn. He wanted to serve his country, so Glenn joined the Navy. There, he became a pilot. As a pilot, Glenn fought in World War II and the Korean War. Later, he joined the Marines. All right, so what was his problem in this paragraph? That will be one of our questions later. What did he want to do at first? First, he signed up for the Army. He wanted to serve the country and work in the military, but he was not called. So how did he solve his problem? Instead, he joined the Navy. All right, the next paragraph heading is First Place. John Glenn kept flying after the war. He flew a plane faster than the speed of sound. That's more than 768 miles per hour. He flew the plane all the way across the country. Glenn was the first person to do this. That's why he was picked to be in the U.S. space program. The program is called NASA. At the time, there were only 6 other astronauts in NASA. Glenn trained for months. On February 20th, 1962, Glenn flew in a ship all the way around Earth. He was the first American to orbit Earth. Now, when they talk about NASA, that's one of the websites we went to a lot at school when we studied our planets. We went to the NASA website to learn about all the different planets. All right, let's look at the next page. This is the page with the picture. Serving in the Senate. Now, we're going to look for another problem and solution in this paragraph, okay? So be ready to find it. John Glenn had become a famous astronaut. Still, he had another goal. He wanted to be a U.S. Senator from Ohio. In 1964, Glenn campaigned for the U.S. Senate. Sadly, he had an accident and hit his head. Uh-oh, that sounds like a problem. I'm going to highlight that for our problem. Right? He wanted to be in the U.S. Senate, and then he hit his head, and he was badly injured. So he could not keep running for the Senate. Let's keep reading and see if we find how he solved his problem. Glenn did not give up. He tried again. He used his skills as an orator or public speaker. As a result, he won a Senate seat in 1974. Okay, so the problem was he wanted to be in the U.S. Senate, but then he hurt his head badly and he couldn't keep running. But then what did he do? He didn't give up and he tried to run again. And then he won. Let's keep reading. John Glenn served in the Senate from 1974 until 1998. During this time, he tried to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. Senator Glenn wrote a law. The law tries to stop people from getting and making nuclear weapons. It also gives rewards to countries that help in this effort. All right, last paragraph is called One More Flight. John Glenn was 77 years old when he left the Senate. He was not done serving, though. NASA wanted to find out how space travel affected older people. So, they asked Glenn to help. Glenn agreed. In 1998, he flew one final time. He flew around Earth for 9 days. He is the oldest person ever to fly in space. John Glenn is a real hero. All right, we read all about John Glenn, and there's his picture again. Now let's take what we learned and answer some questions on the next page. There's just 3 questions, and we'll do them together. Number 1 says, reread paragraph 2 on the first page. What problem did John Glenn face? I'm going to the first page. We highlighted this. Let's see. What was the problem? Do you remember? Here's paragraph 2. He signed up for the army, but he was not called to serve. This was a problem. He signed up for the army, but they did not call him. We can write exactly that. He was not called to serve in the army. That was his first problem. All right, if you need a little bit more time, go ahead and pause. Let's go on to number 2. How did signing up for the Navy solve his problem? Well, remember, he really wanted a job serving the country. He wanted to be in the military, and he didn't get to be in the Army, but then he got to be in the Navy instead. So even though it wasn't his first choice, he still got to serve his country. That's how he solved his problem. He still got to serve the country. right, last question, number 3. Reread paragraph 1 on the second page. What problem did John Glenn face, and what was the solution? All right, so again, we're looking for a problem and solution on the second page. So go to the second page. It should be right next to the one you're on with the questions. And we highlighted a problem and solution right up there in that paragraph. Remember, the next job he wanted to do, he wanted to be in the Senate. But what was the problem? What went wrong when he wanted to run for Senate? He had an accident and hit his head and he was injured, so he couldn't keep running anymore. That was his problem. But then what did he do? He didn't give up. He tried again and then he won. So the problem was he hit his head, he got hurt, and he couldn't keep running for Senate, but then he didn't give up and he won. So those are the things we're going to need to put. Let's see. I'm going to write, he got hurt and could not run for Senate. That's my first sentence. That was the problem, but we still need to write the solution. So we're going to have one more sentence to write. All right, he got hurt and could not run for Senate. But then what did he do? He tried again. And won. All right, I'm going to zoom out so you can see all the answers on your screen. You can pause here if you need time to fill anything else in. Today we read a nonfiction biography about John Glenn, who was an astronaut, and he worked for NASA. He was a senator, and he served in the military. We learned all about his life. And then we answered some questions about problems he had and how he solved his problems. Nice work, third grade.